This podcast contains graphic content and may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
True North True Crime is produced on the territories of the Coast Salish people.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of Missing Nicholas Marion. If you haven't already listened to part 1, please go and do that now, otherwise this episode likely won't make much sense. When we left off yesterday, husband and wife Nicholas and Dory Marion had taken a weekend road trip to the small town of Youbou, British Columbia. Youbou is on Vancouver Island, and they were planning on attending the Laketown Shakedown Music Festival where Dory would be working. The plan was to work the face painting tent and to enjoy an outdoor music festival where Nick could see Busta Rhymes performing. But Nick hadn't been acting like himself for a few months leading up to his disappearance, and he definitely wasn't his usual outgoing and engaging self at the music festival either. When the couple woke up around 6 a.m. on Sunday, June 30th, 2024, Nick made the concerning statement of, "It's all my fault," followed by him saying that he was going to go for a walk. Dory figured that Nick may have gone on a walk to a nearby dock to enjoy the view. This dock was very nearby, just across the way from the residence where Dory and Nick were staying. But when she went to check, he wasn't there. Dory didn't panic yet, though. There were many other places that Nick could have gone on his morning walk, so she figured she'd head back to the trailer and maybe she'd even find him there when she returned.
And the dock was really close. It's like 5-minute walk there, 5-minute walk back. I come back, he's not there. So I went back out and I started looking for footprints because it's like dirt along the side of the road, thinking I would see which direction he walked. And I couldn't see any footprints. And I walked back towards the dock to see if there was footprints in the dirt that led down, and didn't see footprints. So I went back. And then it started raining. So I just waited, thinking he's going to come back. It's raining, like it's really raining. It rained for like half an hour. My memory might be off on that, but it felt like it was raining forever. And so I got in the car and I started driving and slowly drove like larger and larger lengths back and forth. So I went to the cafe and I thought maybe he's just walked all the way to the cafe. I mean, it's a long walk, but maybe. So I went to the cafe and they hadn't seen him. I was starting to get pretty frantic. So I drove into Lake 𝘥𝘰𝘦 and I drove around Lake 𝘥𝘰𝘦 and then I drove back and then I drove down the logging road. Like, it's not logging road. It's the Youbou road. It's called Lake 𝘥𝘥𝘦 Road North. And I think it used to be called Youbou Road. But anyway, I drove past, like away from Youbou, past the trailer, past the Maple Grove campsite. And I kept driving. And then I drove back and I drove into the Pine Point campground. Because, I'd driven quite a ways down the gravel road and I have a crappy Mercedes that's low to the ground and it sucks and there's potholes and stuff. So I was like, okay, drive back to the Pine Point campground. And I went and talked to the hosts and said, my husband went for a walk and I can't find him. And I think we're close to 9 o'clock now. And I'm pretty frantic.
So after driving around to every place she can think of to try and locate Nick and failing to find any sign of him, it becomes apparent that now that hours have gone by, it's time to get the RCMP involved.
So I went back to the cafe because there's no cell reception. So I went back to the cafe and I called the RCMP. I said that my husband went for a walk and I can't find him and I've looked everywhere, and they came right away.
Panic had fully set in by 10 a.m. when Dory called the RCMP to report Nick missing. Keep in mind, Dory was supposed to be working at the festival on this day doing face painting at her booth. We asked her what she remembers about the rest of that chaotic day after the RCMP came to talk to her.
So I go back to the trailer and I wait at the trailer. I think, actually, I don't remember. I think I might have driven to the festival grounds. I think what I did is I drove to the festival grounds and put all my stuff out on the table, because I was closed and they were going to open. And I was like, well, I need to deal with this. And I think I might have just put everything out so that I wasn't appearing to be not there, because I figured we were just going to find Nick, right? I figured we're going to find him. It's all over. I'm back to work. Then I drove back to the trailer and the entire, process, as far as I remember, we're back and forth with RCMP, but they came and talked to me again at the trailer. And they were concerned that maybe he'd gone back to Victoria, because I told them that he didn't want to be there, and that I told them about his state of mind the night before. And they said that they wanted to know that he wasn't here at the house. So Eli, my son, was here. So I contacted Eli, and he went upstairs and made sure that he wasn't just hiding in the bedroom.
When Dory's son checked the James Bay townhome for any sign that Nick had returned, he found nothing. It was now apparent that Nick was likely still in the Youbou area. The RCMP had a member remain at the trailer just in case Nick showed up, while Dory went back to the festival grounds to see if he had shown up at their booth. RCMP began their search efforts by canvassing the area in the immediate vicinity of the trailer where the couple was staying.
They started canvassing, and they called search and rescue, and they were on the ground ready and searching by 7 p.m. It was really, really awful for me to be at the festival grounds, but I knew that it made sense because there was cell service there. My neighbors that were right beside me that were vending, they had a little booth, food booth, were incredibly amazing, because I was frantic, and I was trying to just not be out of my mind. And then I was on the phone with his sister, who was in Orlando, and I'm I'm calling my mom. I'm trying to tell people, like, he's missing. What am I supposed to do? Like, I just remember it being just a complete whirlwind.
Often the easiest way to find a missing person is to track their phone. Law enforcement can compel cellular providers to give them the most recent cell tower ping. This can often lead to the person being found or a place to start searching. But unfortunately, Nick did not have his phone with him, nor did he have his ID or bank cards.
So he had a cell phone sitting by the door, and I don't believe he even brought his ID. I think I had his driver's license in my purse, in my wallet. We often will have each other's ID, so we don't have to carry them. He didn't take his phone with him. He wasn't even on his phone.
So Nick left that morning with little more than the clothes he was wearing. He was wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and Jordans. He certainly wasn't equipped or prepared to spend any extended time outdoors in British Columbia's rugged terrain. While it was summer and the temperatures were manageable, he didn't appear to have any food or water with him when he went out for a walk that morning. Now, we wanted to know how Nick's family found out that he had gone missing on June 30th, 2024. Here's 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴 with what she remembers.
Well, I think I was the first one here to find out. Dory called me and said, Nick went for a walk this morning and he hasn't come back. And I asked, like, have you called police? Like, what happened? Did you guys argue? Did you guys fight? Like, what do you mean he went for a walk and just didn't come back? And she was like, no, like, he said he couldn't sleep well, and he was just going to go for a walk and he'd be right back, but he hasn't come back. She said, so we've already called police, and we were already talking to, like, search team and stuff at this point. And I was like, please keep me posted. And for me, just knowing my brother's history, like, he could leave for a day or two and then come back. And not because of, this is unrelated to his mental health. This is just who he is. Like, sometimes he just wants a break. So it's not that I wasn't taking it as serious. I was just like, let me wait and give it some time to see if he's going to come back tonight. And when he didn't come back that night, I was like, okay, I got to book a flight out there. So I immediately booked a flight. I told my job what was going on, and I was like, I got to, go to Canada. And so I caught the next flight out there.
So as 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴 just shared with us, there had been instances in the past where Nick would walk out of a heated situation and just take time for himself to regroup, but he'd always return. This meant that in the first 24 hours, there was a prevailing hope that he had just gone somewhere to take a break and that he'd be found. When this turned out to not be the case, 𝘥𝘰𝘦 and Carl flew from the southern United States to Vancouver Island to take part in the searches for Nick. This was both of their first times to be in this particular region of Vancouver Island, and they both shared with us how intimidating they found the terrain near Youbou to be.
No, that was my first visit, and and I told Carl, I said, there's no way Nick would go wandering off in these woods. Hell, I wouldn't go. They were scary. I'm like, this is like a scary movie, and we're we never gone camping or done any of that type of stuff, as kid. I mean, when he was younger. So I don't know. Cole and him grew up when they were in their teenagers. So I'm not sure. I know they've done some hiking here in Texas when they came to visit me, but I mean, not overnight or anything of that nature. And I told Cole, I said, and especially when it got dark, I said, there's no way Nick would just hang out in the woods and avoid anyone. Like, he's not that kind of kid. He likes the good life.
I was first thinking this forest is dense. It's huge. I was like, he could literally be anywhere. It's massive, and from down to where the road is, next to where the water is, there's, that covers a lot of area distance wise. But even behind from where the road is going up into the mountains is a ton of distance too. And it's just covered in trees and there's wildlife and everything. You know, I will say the good news from when I was out there, I didn't see any birds circling in the sky, any specific areas. We haven't found his shoes anywhere. There's no bones or anything like that, So like, I just held on to hope. Like, I'm hoping and praying my brother just got the hell out of there and went to civilization somewhere that's just far away where people don't even know that he's missing, or maybe cameras haven't been checked there to see his image or something. I mean, I'm still praying. I'm being really hopeful. Obviously, with the amount of time that's passed, it's hard to stay hopeful, but I feel like I have to, because I couldn't really process anything else right now.
The searches for Nicholas Marion began right away. Police, search and rescue, and volunteers were on the ground in Youbou looking for him. For those that don't know, the search protocol for a missing hiker looks a lot different than the behavior of a team looking for a missing person that is deemed to be in some sort of mental health crisis. For a lost hiker, searchers rely on typical hiker behavior patterns. Hikers often follow trails, move downhill, seek shelter, or stay near water. Search teams will likely begin by searching established trails, nearby landmarks, or areas with natural shelters. But for a person with mental illness, such as schizophrenia or depression, those people might not follow predictable patterns. They might intentionally hide, avoid rescuers, or wander aimlessly, which broadens the search area. They might not respond to calls or signals due to fear, confusion, or paranoia. Here's Dory with more on this.
That next day, so they searched with Visi vests and flashlights. At that point, I told them I hadn't said anything about his mental condition because I was like, we're going to find him. I just said he wasn't himself. He's been grieving his mother's loss. We hadn't gotten into depth. We hadn't had the sit down, deep dive into Nick Marion and who he was. At this point, we just knew he'd gone for a walk. He was missing. I told them that he was really just, unwell after his mom passed, and he hadn't been acting himself. So their search efforts were, searching for their probability, how they do that whole probability thing, quickly changed to mental health, which changed the scope of how they were searching. People with mental health tend to travel a long distance in a short space, like a lot of travel, like manic, but not traveling a really great distance.
Before we get into more details from Cola about the search efforts that took place in the first week after Nick initially went missing, we need to mention the potential sightings of Nick. Now, all of these sightings were on June 30th, the day he went missing, and then July 1st, which was the very next day. These sightings are based on eyewitness accounts. We have not been able to get these sightings confirmed by official investigators, as this is an open and ongoing investigation. But the June 30th sightings are as follows. Around 6:15 to 6:30 a.m., Nick leaves the trailer. The first sighting was at 6:30 a.m. when a man saw him walking down the street. The next sighting was at 7:30 a.m., and this was at Pine Point Camp Trail. The next sighting was at 9 a.m. at the Upper Pine Point Trail, where he turned towards the lake on the trail. The next sighting was at 3 p.m. at the Mill Site Trail. At 7:30 p.m., he was sighted on Pine Point Trail, and this was the same family that reported seeing him at 7:30 a.m. The last sighting on June 30th was at 10:15 p.m. on Cowan Road, and Cowan Road is between Pine Point and Maple Grove campsites, and it's in a residential neighborhood. Keep Cowan Road in mind as it's going to come up a little later. The one and only sighting on July 1st happened at 4:30 p.m. at Maple Grove campsite, where someone thinks they saw Nick on the beach. It's important to reiterate here that these sightings cannot be confirmed. There is no CCTV video to pull from to be able to make a formal identification. These are all eyewitness sightings that people in the area reported.
Over the phone before I got there, Dory told me there had been like 5 sightings of my brother. So when I got there, first thing, I'm like, let's go hit these woods, and I'm out looking in the woods for my brother. But the day I got there, there was not another sighting after that. While the SARS team had a plan to stay in a specific area because of what they were told from Dory about Nick's state of mind and his mental health. So they kept the radius pretty small, thinking he would walk like back and forth, I guess, within the same area. And me, when I got out there, I was like, well, since there's already, people there doing that, I'm going to try to like think like my brother. And, if I left emotionally upset, I might walk a little bit farther, So I went kind of farther out and drove to some other campsites outside of the radius just because there was already searches going on there to see if I could find anything. And on one of the paths, I did find a black beanie that I brought to RCMP.
2 items of clothing were located in the searches for Nick. A black size medium H&M t-shirt, which Nick was known to wear, as well as a black beanie. The t-shirt was located in the bushes between Maple Grove and Pine Point campsites, sometime between July 2nd and July 4th by the search and rescue team. Dory shared with us that DNA testing was being done on the black t-shirt, but as of September 2024, those results have not been released. The items of clothing weren't the only point of interest in the search for Nick Marion. A resident on Cowan Road reported that their home had been broken into, though nothing of significant value was taken. There were no signs of forced entry, but the key to the door had been hidden in a flower pot outside the back door. Upon inspection, they noticed a few odd details. In the lower bedroom, folded clothing had been tossed off the bed and a bedsheet was missing. Additionally, a new throw blanket was taken from the lower living room couch area near the sliding glass doors facing the lake. The resident mentioned that they had locked the house and left at around 4 p.m. on July 1st. Another resident living directly next to the house on Cowan Road, where the blanket was reported missing, stated that their keys had disappeared. The keys were attached to a red spring keychain and consisted of 3 keys. Now, these keys were always placed in one of 2 locations, either on the table outside the trailer door or just inside the door. However, when this resident went to lock up their house and trailer, those keys were missing. Even after checking again 3 days later, they still had not found them. The resident mentioned that they had left their property on Monday, July 1st, and returned the following weekend. They reported that nothing appeared to be missing and admitted that they wouldn't have noticed if someone had entered their house or trailer as long as nothing had been disturbed. What is frustrating about Nicholas's disappearance is that it's filled with so many questions and so far, 0 answers. The reported sightings cannot be confirmed, and the instances of homes in the area missing items could be connected to Nick or could be just coincidental. It's enough to make anyone go down various rabbit holes of possibilities. Both Cola and Carl feel that not all avenues of inquiry have been explored.
And it's really hard to decipher like what is the truth versus what is an embellishment or being made up, or because your mind, when somebody you love is missing, your mind goes to every single possibility. I have thought, okay, he didn't talk to his family a month before he went missing. Could be mental health, could be a cult, could be, it just like my mind has thought of many different things, but something that keeps coming up, obviously, is why isn't there another investigation done besides just taking the first narrative at face value? Like, where is the fact checking here on all the information? Like, why weren't phones taken? Why weren't houses checked? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's been a lot that has transpired since I got out there up until this day that is just very fishy and red flag.
I mean, yeah, it's like they weren't taking us seriously about anything. I mean, that's how we felt. It's like, okay, well, we have this one narrative that to us, even while we were there, had been totally exhausted. I mean, why not shift gears, at least let's close the door on these other thoughts that we're having. Um, and we didn't, I mean, me personally, I didn't feel like that was even there was an interest in doing anything but searching in the woods.
It was at this point in our conversations with Dory, 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴, and Carl that we wanted to know what they thought happened. What were their theories? Did they think this was a suicide, a case of misadventure, or an accident? Could Nick have voluntarily vacated his own life and started over? Or did they believe that foul play could have played a role in Nick's disappearance? 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴 gave her thoughts on whether she thought suicide was a possibility.
He was in sobriety when he went missing. He was working out, he was taking care of his health and stuff. So to me, I know that my brother has a pretty big ego. He can have a pretty big ego. And even if he was like very depressed and very sad, and I know it's possible. I know it's 100% possible. And I know nobody wants to think this of their family member. I just don't see my brother capable of something like self-harm to that extent. His self-harm would be like, I'm going to go to a bar and get drunk and maybe go on a bender. That would be his level of self-harm.
Carl hopped in with his thoughts on suicide, Nick wanting to start over, and then an accident and foul play.
Suicide, I totally don't believe at all. I mean, that's just, Nick loved himself too much, even in down times. I mean, he was always the one going to change the world and tell people what they should do and how they should do it. So, I mean, that to me is off the table. Willfully leaving, we've entertained possibilities of that because there's some, like my daughter mentioned, there's some shorter periods of time where he has just left his phone, left his ID so that no one could get in touch with him. But, those were only for a couple of days. We've learned that information basically from his first wife that he did it to her, but that was only for a couple of days. Accidents, we're open to that. If it was an accident in the woods, then he was stuck or something. I believe everywhere we searched, we would have found him at that point. At my mind, foul play, again, with the number of red flags, we just like to rule that out. But there wasn't any foul play. We feel like the more time keep lapsing that, I mean, anything can be cleaned up at this point now. I mean, we're months after the initial missing. So, everything that's searched from this point on could be cleaned or contaminated or, just null and voided out. So that, I mean, if there was foul play, anyone admitted any foul play could easily be cleaned up at this point. We feel like the cops were totally negligent, not taking our concerns and at least investigating them. That's how I feel personally. So I don't know how Cole feel, but I feel like they totally neglected our concerns. And since we were from America, they didn't care.
Finally, we wanted to hear what Dory's thoughts were in terms of what she thinks may have happened.
It's such a big question. I'll tell you what I know. What I know is Nick, the likelihood of him intentionally self-harming in a very, I just have a really hard time accepting that. When somebody suffers from mental health challenges and they could be in a psychosis, everything you know about them is gone because now this person could be anybody. So putting myself in, the shoes of somebody who's suffering and then layering over top of that what I know about Nick, any possibility is possible, including him getting out of there and making his way. He's incredibly resourceful person. He's talented. He's charismatic. He's very easy to like. Everybody that meets him, in his healthy state of mind is, you can be annoyed with how extroverted he is. And I know people who have been, but he could very easily be out there and be healthy. So I have to accept that as a possibility. I don't believe that there's foul play, but then again, I get these, messages like, have you heard about the Lost Boys? And have you heard about this cult? And have you heard about these work camps? And, it starts my brain spiraling and going in all these different directions. But I won't dismiss anything at this point because it's too far into this. What I know is that if he's not here, again, like I've said before, there's nothing I can do about that. If he is still, on this planet, there's things I can do.
During our conversations with Dory, 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴, and Carl, it became apparent that these are people who have spent the last nearly 3 months racking their brain with any and every possibility. 𝘥𝘰𝘦 and Carl have hired a PI and also are working with nonprofits who offer help in searching for missing people. Dory reads every message that she receives on social media, which can be incredibly overwhelming as, of course, there's tons of people out there who genuinely want to help, but there's also, unfortunately, people who want to take advantage of a situation where someone is desperate to find answers. Thankfully, there are now people in place on the Nicholas Marion Search and Info Facebook group that are able to moderate those messages and comments for Dory. We would like to thank those kind and compassionate people for doing the work that they do. We're now going to take a quick break. When we return, we will hear about the impact that Nick's disappearance has had on his loved ones and how you, our listeners, can help.
The impact of Nicholas Marion's disappearance has been felt in 2 different countries on opposite coasts of North America. Dory and her family have had their daily lives essentially halted in Victoria, British Columbia, while 𝘥𝘰𝘦 and Carl are trying desperately to find out what can be done from afar in both Texas and Florida. They've had to learn how the Canadian justice system operates and how things are different from what they're used to. It's important for us to provide family members and loved ones with a place to share how this situation has impacted them. So here's Dory.
After Nick went missing, I wasn't doing well. And my family took me to the hospital. And the doctor that saw me worked in the psych ward. And she asked if there was any, because I was describing my experience and being stressed and being worried about him. And, I was absolutely in crisis. And, I was pretty manic myself at the time, just desperate to find him. And she said that, you can go your whole life and have just a couple of episodes. You can go your entire life and something traumatic happens and a genetic marker gets like almost triggered in you. And you sort of all of a sudden have, this mental health issue that never was there before. And it happens with schizophrenia where people have these sort of moments in their life and otherwise they're completely fine. Or they learn to cope with it and not express it. And this is my fear around why he was so silent and being the person he is, being male, not just being male, that's unfair, but being Nick, that, he wants to be strong, he wants to be provider, he wants to be the one who's holding it together, so for him to be silent, as I reflect back, it makes sense to me now that, a lot of that was probably him not wanting to share the chaos that was happening inside his mind.
Dory's short stay in the hospital after Nick went missing gave her more of an idea of how a traumatic life event can trigger a mental health crisis, and led her to do some reflection on the weeks and months leading up to Nick going missing. Here's Dory speaking on how she feels now and looking towards the future.
It's just hard to think about the future, It's hard to imagine the future because you have your whole life is planned out and, one day you just wake up and that whole future, your life is over, And when I was saying that, I know my family thought that I was talking about like me doing something to myself, but it wasn't really about that feeling of your life is over. I don't know how to put you guys in my eyes and see, but, Nick is literally in every single thing, everything. He's everywhere in my life. He's in my future vision of what we're going to do. Eli's graduating this year. His son graduated last year. We're just starting our future. We've started a business, a tiny home business 3 years ago. Like, that was his vision for our future. So I really still believe that we will find him, but we've gone so far now. Starts to feel like, start to feel really hopeless.
Dory and Nick had plans for their future. They had a business together and were really looking forward to making the world a better place with a tiny home community for seniors. But Dory isn't the only one who feels that their life has been permanently altered. Carl and 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴 are having to navigate this incredibly difficult situation with the added complication of having thousands of kilometers between them and where their family member went missing. Here's Carl and 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴.
I just feel the loss. I don't wish this on anyone. I just, I keep my head up, and then sometimes I'm just totally down, but it's just the not knowing. It's dumb. Then you feel like you can't do anything. And if you've never been through this, you don't know who to reach out to. So we're trying. I'm sorry. I have another organization that I'm reaching out to right after I get off with you guys, that my wife found. So we're going to reach out to them. They're here in the States, but they have reach overseas and in other countries. So we're reaching out to them right after this call. And it's just a daily battle, or, just praying that God has him in his hands, that he's protected out there.
I think my dad kind of wrapped it up there, but just a helpless feeling. Like, you feel like you take a step forward and you might have something, but then it's, there's just a lot of road blockages, it feels like, to even just try to get, trying to call mental health institutions and say, do you guys have a John Doe? Do you have somebody with a tattoo that says highly favored across their neck? He's mixed, and they're like, we can't give you that information. Or being like, I know you can or can't, but my brother's missing. And it's just, you want to plead all the time. And all you want to know is that they're okay.
Nicholas Marion has been missing since June 30th, 2024 from the town of Youbou, British Columbia. At the time of his disappearance, he was dressed in a black t-shirt, black pants, and black retro Jordan 11 shoes. He left without his phone, wallet, or ID. Reports suggest that he was spotted 6 times on the day he disappeared near Pine Point campsite, the mill site, and along Cowan Road near the Maple Grove campsite. The last alleged sighting was on July 1st, 2024, around 4:30 p.m. when he was sitting on a beach near the Maple Grove campsite. Despite the official search efforts being called off, volunteers have dedicated significant time and energy to combing through the Youbou and Lake Cowichan areas in hopes of finding Nick. While all leads are being followed, no confirmed sightings have been reported. Although over 3 months have passed since his disappearance, Nick's family and friends remain hopeful for his safe return. Nick is described as a 6-foot-tall, 170-pound man, memorable for his vibrant personality and distinctive appearance, including numerous tattoos of Egyptian and spiritual symbols on his arms, flowers on his hands, and a neck tattoo that reads, highly favored. Known for his warm heart and optimism, Nick is a loving husband, father, and family man. However, before his disappearance, he had been struggling with his mental health following the recent passing of his mother. His wife, Dory, noted that he had become more withdrawn, less social, and had lost a significant amount of weight, heightening her concerns for his well-being. Efforts to locate Nick have been exhaustive. The RCMP, Cowichan Search and Rescue, and multiple volunteer search teams, including private canine teams, have all conducted thorough searches of the area with no significant clues uncovered. While these volunteer search efforts have currently been suspended until new information emerges, Nick's wife, Dory, continues to organize local search teams, post flyers, canvass areas, and spread awareness on social media. Their search has now expanded to other communities across Vancouver Island and beyond. Nick's loved ones remain optimistic and hopeful that he will be found and can receive the support he needs to regain his health and happiness. We urge our listeners to join the Facebook group Nicholas Marion Search and Info to stay up to date on the latest information on the case, as well as to participate in any upcoming searches. We will share a link to the Facebook group in the show notes of this episode. Residents of 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴, Youbou, and the surrounding areas are still encouraged to thoroughly check their properties, including any outbuildings or structures. If you have surveillance cameras on your homes, trails, or farm stands, please review the footage for any signs of Nick, particularly on the Canada Day long weekend of 2024. Friends and family have organized a fundraising campaign on GoFundMe to support the search for Nicholas and alleviate the significant financial strain on Dory. If you would like to contribute, we will share that link in the show notes as well. The 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴 RCMP continues to actively investigate Nick's case. Anyone with information about Nicholas Marion's whereabouts is urged to contact the 𝘥𝘰𝘦𝘴 RCMP at 250-749-6668. Here's Dory on more ways for our listeners to help.
Obviously, sharing on social media. I'm not really a savvy social media person. And I don't have a assistant, I don't have like a social media team and a team that will organize, searches, and I don't have someone to strategize with me. So those people, and I do have people, strangers, reach out to me who are like, this is something I can take on. Those sort of like really focused people who have skills that they feel like they could help with some of that communication, if, for instance, you're really involved in foraging and you feel like you're a very connected person in that area, I could really use help with reaching sort of those small groups that share the word about his disappearance. And I feel like I get to the wall and I don't know what more I can do. At this point, it's not so much boots on the ground as it is like sharing his picture, sharing his story and keeping him present. So if there are people out there who have those skills to help with social media, TikTok, I don't even know how to make a TikTok. I know that that's something people have suggested. I'm just kind of outside of the, those skill sets are a little beyond me. And then just people just, if there are people who have ideas or strategies for how to do that work, I'm open to it. I don't have as much attention coming, there's a lot of energy, condensed energy at the start and then kind of disperses. And I get a lot of prayers now, but I don't get as much people who have a little bit of time. We've started a campaign painting rocks. I'm not sure if you've seen that. For those people who don't physically have the capacity to go out and, post or be out, searching or on social media quite in the same way. If they are crafty, we love for people to it's a way for us to honor Nick because he has a lot of Egyptian tattoos. It's a very simple thing you can do with friends or with your kids. And, we have QR codes that can be printed out and glued onto the back.
If you think you can assist Dory with managing the social media efforts in the search for her husband, please contact us at truenorthtruecrime@gmail.com or join the Nicholas Marion Facebook group and get in touch with one of the admin team. Community volunteers play a crucial role in assisting families who have missing loved ones, especially with the overwhelming number of people who are providing sightings, theories, and tips. If you have time to lend a hand, it would be greatly appreciated. Nick's family have partnered with Please Bring Me Home, an organization that we've worked alongside many times, and we absolutely love them, so we do feel good that they are assisting in this case. Here's Dory with more.
So we've recently built a relationship with the Please Bring Me Home organization. So we are asking people to please, any tips, if you think it's really, some of the things I've shared with you, including, that blanket that was taken, changes the narrative of the potential direction, the story, the possibilities of of what could have happened out in those days afterwards. Those little things might seem completely irrelevant, but if there are any tips, whether you think you might have seen him, whether you think you might have seen something that was odd, out of the ordinary, didn't belong, it's really important. They're working to do what I mentally can't do, which is take all this information, including, someone was picked up hitchhiking on the other side of the lake after he went missing, and this person over here found a t-shirt, and that person over here, it's a lot for me to do, and they are masterful at putting the right people on that job. And so if there are people who think they might have something, but they don't want to waste the time, they don't want to waste anyone's time, please waste my time. Reach out to me, share it with the tip line, contact the RCMP. What seems irrelevant could be the answer. I'd love for people to join the Facebook group. I know it's not as active. I'm not really a social media person. I don't post a lot online. This has been a very hard process because I've become the person who's reporting to strangers who don't know Nick. That's my job. And I know that's important. It's a very vulnerable thing to do, to share what you're feeling online. And I'm trying my best to do that. And I'll be better. I'll be better. It's been a hard stretch. And I'd like to be more engaged, and I'd like to have more people to help me to continually post there. But please, that's the place that we are. We aim to share information.
Dory also shared with us that she does plan to create a website where all the information regarding Nick's disappearance, including a timeline, a map of the alleged sightings, as well as images of Nick and what he was last wearing, will all be in one place. Dory shared that while social media is an incredibly helpful tool to some degree, it can also be detrimental to investigations. Sometimes the comment sections on social media can detract from what the family is ultimately trying to do, and that's to find Nicholas Marion. When that website is created, we will post it to our social media. If you're unable to assist by searching, through financial donations, or by volunteering your time online, another way you can help Nicholas and his loved ones is by sharing his missing poster, this episode, and the fact that he is still missing. Here's Carl, and then Cola.
If there's anything that they can offer as for this, how to get us through this, and who we should speak with, or that type of thing, how it actually works in Canada. We're learning as we read more and more about the RCMP and about just the way that they operate there in Canada, what they can and cannot do. We've learned quite a bit on that. So, we understand that they can't accuse anyone without solid proof. And we've read and listened to a whole lot since that visit to Canada. So, but like my daughter said, we're going to just keep pressing on until we find out definitively what happened, whether it's good or bad. We just need that closure to know.
I would kind of, like you said in the beginning, to engage with the story, to share his story, to talk with, their friends about the story, just so it doesn't get lost in the pile. And, I would just say, like, pay attention to how it unfolds. And if anything comes up, and just please, I would plead, don't stop sharing. Don't stop talking. He's not scary. He's super friendly. He'll crack a joke if you see him. It's kind of hard for me to just be like, talk about my brother as if he's like not with us, because I'm not at that place, to share that. But I would just say, if you do see him, if you're ready to laugh, go say hello.
If you were at Lake Town Shakedown on the Canada Day long weekend in June of 2024 and believe that you saw Nicholas Marion or have any information, big or small, you are asked to reach out to the Lake Cowichan RCMP. Your information could be the one thing that leads this investigation in the right direction to help bring Nick home to those who are missing him dearly.
Well, I think Nick is he is a very, very unique human being on the planet. I think we're all unique, but Nick stands out. He has a huge heart. He's incredibly loving, but he's also an amazing friend and would do anything for you. Everybody that knows him, if you talk to people who know him, certainly the people in my life that know him, he is incredibly giving. He shows love by giving gifts and cooking. He's an amazing cook, and he loves cooking. He would much prefer that I not cook, and I think I'm a pretty good cook. He loves his family. He loves his siblings, and he cares very deeply. And he's complicated, and I love that about him. I used to have a bumper sticker that I kept on the fridge that said "Normal people scare me," and that's exactly it. Like, Nick is not normal. He's very unusual, and he can be a lot, but he's a beautiful person, and he's a very loving husband. He made me feel loved and cherished, and I never had to question how he felt about me, which is why this is all very confusing.
If you or anyone you know needs support for mental health, there are many resources available to you, no matter which country you live in. If you're in Canada or the USA, you can call 988 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for free confidential support. The 988 helpline connects callers to trained crisis responders who offer support and resources. We will share resources for Canada, the US, Australia, and the UK in the show notes of this episode. 38-year-old Nicholas Marion is described as 6 feet tall, weighing approximately 170 pounds. He has many tattoos, including Egyptian and spiritual symbols on both arms. We will be sharing a number of photos of Nick as well as his tattoos on our social media, which is at TNTCpod on Instagram and True North True Crime on Facebook for our listeners to have a look at and to share. We would like to extend a massive thank you to Dory Marion, Carl Marion, and Cowan Marion for speaking to us for this episode to help us and our audience to get to know Nick and for trusting us to share this story. We also need to thank Please Bring Me Home for getting us connected to Nicholas Marion's family and for all the amazing work they do to support the families of missing people. Finally, thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into this episode. If you've got a case suggestion for us, you can reach out to truenorthtruecrime@gmail.com. We will post about any updates or upcoming searches on our social media. We will also do our best to participate in any ground searches on Vancouver Island for Nicholas Marion. That's all for this episode. We will see you again very soon. Until then, stay safe, everyone.